We're going to move on to STANCOM report number 899. Discussion. Representative McDermott.
Speaker, I'm in opposition to this measure.
Opposition, please proceed.
And Mr. Speaker, I'm probably the only one in this body who shared an apartment, 700 square foot apartment, with a transgendered individual for about 3 months. About 30 years ago, when my wife and I were first married, one day was sharing an apartment with her cousin, George. I went out to the living room. I said to my wife, I said, "Who is that? Did George bring home some floozy?" And my wife said, "That's Leilani." I said, "Leilani? Tommy, George's brother." The Samoan term for that is fa'afafine, part of their culture. And so Tommy stayed with us for 3 months. I got to observe it up close and personal, Mr. Speaker. And I only tell you that because people call me a hater, bigot, homophobe, ignorant, and all the rest. And I can't prove a negative, but I can only tell you that fact. Now, Mr. Speaker, with regard to this measure here in front of us, we're affirming their distorted view of reality. I prayed for Tommy. I pray for others who are trapped in this situation where they're born a man, they have a male brain, they have male sexual reproductive organs, but they think they're something else. They think they're a female. Of course, now we're told you can be anything you want, across the spectrum, in between, whatever you want. But that's a distorted view of reality, Mr. Speaker, and I point to Johns Hopkins Hospital, no conservative bastion, by the way. They pioneered sex change operations. They don't do them anymore because they don't work. And the chief of psychiatry there, the retired chief of psychiatry, who headed it up, said it's a gender identity disorder. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? That's like Karen Carpenter looking in the mirror. Karen Carpenter looking in the mirror and says she's morbidly obese. And our reaction is not to give Karen treatment. Our reaction is, here's some diet pills, Karen. I mean, it's fundamentally flawed. And then you look, everybody knows what Bruce Jenner's going through right now. World's greatest athlete, 1976. Stud muffin, knee bandaged up, running through to get the gold medal, the 800 meters. Dude was on Wheaties boxes. He was a manly man, no question. World's greatest male athlete. Now he wants to be a woman. And under this measure, he is a woman. And there's no trace of it anywhere. So this is a cruel hoax. It's social engineering. It's political correctness, just like the previous measure. And this is a distortion of reality. When these people need treatment, not a confirmation of a distorted view of reality. So for those reasons, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, members. Representative Belatti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
In support, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the decision to amend one's birth certificate is not taken lightly, and individuals that choose to do so have no doubt spent countless years grappling with this decision. This proposed bill would still require a signed affidavit from a licensed medical professional, but it really strikes at the heart, at the requirement for sex reassignment surgery. Dr. Bidwell, Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Director of Adolescent Medicine at the University of Hawaii, JABSOM, for the past 25 years, notes in his testimony that this requirement of a sex change in order for transgender individuals to obtain a change of gender designation on birth certificates is a historical artifact. It is outdated and no longer reflects modern-day medical opinion on what it means to be transgender or the nature of gender transition. We know that the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association all support and have policies that support birth certificate laws that do not require gender reassignment surgery for their certificates. In 2014, the American Medical Association issued their statement saying that they support policies that allow for a change of sex designation on birth certificates based upon verification by a physician that that individual has undergone gender transition according to applicable medical standards of care. That's what this proposal does. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I'm in strong support of this bill.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Tupola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition.
Opposition, please proceed.
I wanted to share, since I know there's some proponents of the bill here, on what I did as far as researching since the hearing till now. I did vote yes out of committee. You know, something that compelled me when the proponents of the bill came is that some of the transgenders were from my district. You know, and honestly, after hearing their stories, I was moved because, you know, of the discrimination. And so sat down with them, called some other my transgender friends. And I feel strongly against discrimination. You know, I feel strongly against mistreatment. My concern was that no one was helping them on the level of discrimination to fight it with TSA or other events that they have had. At the heart of what's going on is the treatment that they're getting when they show their ID. That's where it's stemming from. And so they want an ID that reflects what they are, and that's what a lot of my transgender friends spent hours of time telling me. The thing that kind of comforted me after we spoke was that there is a process available to them at the driver's license level. And so some of them have done it already. But I talked with the Vital Records Department at the Department of Health, and they also came forward and described to me the vital records would be a verification of events at birth, and that our nation, our state has long years of keeping very accurate records. In fact, our vital record expert here in Hawaii used to work for the federal government. My concern also is when I sat down with the Attorney General was, would there eventually be a repeal of same-sex marriage? Because now this would be a heterosexual marriage, and that's the certificates that you use to get married. Those are my concerns. It was kind of all wrapped into one, but my main concern was that at the discrimination level that they got justice and that they were treated fairly. And so I felt that it would be, that voting in opposition would be okay if they were getting justice at a different level for what they needed to, and that I would be there to fight for them against that discrimination in other areas. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Representative. Any further discussion, Representative Lopresti?
I stand in support.
In support, please proceed.
To follow up on the representative from Nanakuli, she makes an excellent point about the IDs of transgender individuals sometimes not matching up with how somebody might perceive that individual. It leads to violence. It leads to violence every day for transgender people. And while the representative from Nanakuli is right that maybe there are mechanisms in place for citizens in Hawaii to use, if they're born in Hawaii and they move somewhere else, they have to rely on their certificate of live birth to get those IDs, and then they face the same problems. To change gears a little bit, for those who may have difficulty in understanding the difference between gender and sex, and there is a difference, I want to focus on the anatomical argument for it, because there is an anatomical argument for this bill as well, because it provides a clearer way for hermaphroditic individuals, more commonly known today as intersex individuals, to correct mistaken recorded gender identity. And that way they can correct vital records. This bill also allows them to be who they are in life and on paper. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that it's an important bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Any further discussion, members, on the measure before us? Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition, may I request permission to enter written comments into the
So
journal?
ordered. Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Lee.
Thank you. Very briefly, just in support, I'd just like to note that Vital Records at DOH is open to making this change, which really just modernizes our existing law with respect to largely misunderstood segment of our population. I'd just like to point out that 6 states in the District of Columbia are already making these changes to put their laws in compliance with what makes sense. And I'd just like to read very briefly the testimony of the Hawaii Commission on the Status of Women, which said the majority of transgender people do not choose to undergo sex reassignment surgeries for various reasons, including prohibitive costs and other medical and personal reasons. Under internationally accepted clinical standards, transgender individuals may opt instead for hormone therapy and other treatments as a result. The international medical community recognizes that surgery may be appropriate for some, but not for all. And this bill attempts to modernize our laws without retaining an outdated notion of what it means to be transgender. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Ng.
Briefly in support.
In support, please proceed.
There's been a few statements regarding transgendered people and whether or not their condition is a mental illness. So homosexuality was diagnosed in the DSM as an illness until 1973. It was removed in 1987, but gender identity disorder persisted until the DSM-5, which only came out a couple years ago by the American Psychological Association. Gender identity disorder characterized all transgendered people as mentally ill based on the standards to be set by the DSM-5. individuals are now diagnosed with gender dysphoria for displaying a marked congruence between one's experienced and expressed gender and assigned gender. So when we're talking about science, let's please not focus on statements and articles from the 70s. In the respect for science, we gotta know what the most recent peer-reviewed and associational statements are. And Jack Drescher, who is a member of the APA subcommittee working on the revision, stated that all psychiatric diagnoses occur within a cultural context. We know there is a whole community of people out there who are not seeking medical attention and live between the two binary categories. We want to send the message that the therapist's job is not to pathologize. And these binary committees, these binary categories were really created under the notion that a previous speaker mentioned about Bruce Jenner being a manly man. The idea of what a manly man is, being a physical specimen, the idea of masculinity today, of not being able to, that it's frowned upon to, as a man, to express yourself through emotion or through reason, and instead should do so in anger, and you shouldn't cry in public. These things are dehumanizing. And I think if these binary categories were less strict in American society, then we wouldn't even need these types of bills. It wouldn't be a big deal to be a man or a male or a female on a birth certificate. So I'd really like to see culturally that attitude be eradicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Kawakami.
Reservation.
So ordered. Thank you very much. Any further discussion, members? Representative Tokioka, followed by Representative McDermott.
Thank you very much. Reservations.
So ordered. Representative McDermott, still in opposition.
Still in opposition, second time. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, Mr. Speaker, but in 1972, homosexuality was removed from the disorder manual because they couldn't conduct their conventions. They were being protested. So they said, the hell with it, we'll just take it out so we can conduct our conventions. As my friend from Maui mentioned 2 years ago, they removed transgenderism from the mental disorders. But it was based on politics. That's all it is, politics, like sex ed for kindergartners. It's politics. It's social engineering. It's leftism, cultural context, politics, leftism. There's no one who can stand before me and tell me that Bruce Jenner doesn't have a problem right now. He got a mental disorder. As clear as the sky is blue, he does. So for those reasons, I'm still against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, members, on the measure before us? If not, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the last measure on page 27.